welcome into the first episode of the Deadman's Books. I thought that the best way for me to kind of kick this off would be for me to give my top 5 reads that I enjoyed the most from 2024. It's kind of the middle of January when I'm recording this, and so I thought that that would just be a good way to kind of introduce myself and introduce this podcast. One disclaimer though, I don't necessarily read like the latest book that's come out. Every now and then we'll pick one up and read something that's new or trending, but most of it is just books that I've stumbled across and I'm reading those as I go. Sometimes it'll be a classic, like I've read Dracula for the first time this Halloween, things like that. So I just thought that the best way for me to start off would be to go through my top 5 of 2024. And so today I'm going to start with my number 5 book in that countdown. And that's a book called Long Time No See by Dermot Healy. He wrote this book in 2011. Healy is an Irish author, and this book is very much an Irish book. I'm doing this one by myself, so I don't have a lot of people to bounce things off of. As I have in some future episodes that are coming up, I've got some fantastic people who are good readers and they love books, and we'll be talking about those as we go along. So I thought that I would just read the synopsis there on the inside sleeve of Long Time No See. It says it's set in 2006 in an isolated coastal town in northwest Ireland. Long Time No See is narrated by a sensitive teenager on the cusp of adulthood named Phillip Feeny, known to one and all as Mr. Psyche. Haunted by a recent traumatic event, he is living with his father, a builder, and his mother, a nurse. There is a girl, Anna, for whom he has feelings. He does odd jobs and spends much of his time in the company of 2 men, some 50 years his senior, his granduncle JoeJoe and JoeJoe's crony, the Blackbird. Wonderful, eccentric characters full of long-standing resentments and dark secrets. The appearance of a bullet hole in JoeJoe's window one day draws Mr. Psyche into a series of bemusing and unsettling adventures. As JoeJoe's world threatens to collapse, it is Mr. Psyche who must digest this and acknowledge the new world taking shape in the old. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what the story's about. I'm just going to kind of talk about the characters and a few things that I enjoyed about it. But I picked this book up at McKay's. I live in Middle Tennessee, just about an hour and a half outside of Nashville. Actually, about an hour and a half outside of Knoxville as well. Nashville and Knoxville both have a McKay's, but I love Nashville and have spent a lot of time in Nashville, and I just prefer the Nashville McKay's. That's always the one that we go to. And when I went to McKay's one time, I found Long Time No See there, and it was $1. It was a hardback. It was $1. It's got a beautiful cover. Just to kind of get off on a side note here, I feel like I have a little bit of a method when I do go to McKay's. If you've never been, it's an enormous used bookstore. They've got all kinds of different things too. They've got used records, used CDs, used graphic novels. They have used toys for the kids. They have a lot of Funko Pops. They have a lot of used electronics that people have brought in. They have like DVDs, movies, TV shows, things like that. But I think the centerpiece really is the book section for McKay's. It's huge. I teach at a high school. It's probably the size of my high school's gym. The book section is. It's enormous. So it can be a little bit overwhelming when you go there. I feel like that they do the best that they can to organize McKay's by genre when you're looking for books. It is in alphabetical order also. However, if you have a specific book that you're looking for, I feel like that there's a chance that you're probably not going to find it. I know for me, there's a lot of books that I feel like I read that I'm not really sure what genre they fall under. And so when I go to McKay's, I will spend probably an hour or so just kind of looking through roughly, just hitting some books that I've really been wanting to read lately. But I really go there with like not much of an expectation to find what I'm wanting. So I kind of created my own little method for finding books at McKay's. I'll go through, I'll either find an author that I have enjoyed or read a book of before, or I'll see, they've got them in there. You can see the spines. I'll see a spine or a title that seems interesting, and I'll pull that out in the cover if it looks interesting, because I'll be honest, I'm judging this book by its cover. And then I'll look at the price, and if the price falls under like $4 or so, and I'll read the synopsis of the book, and it sounds like something that I might like, well, then I'll take that gamble. It's my McKay's gamble, and sometimes it pays off, and it did with Long Time No See. I got it for, like I said, $1. Sometimes it doesn't pay off at all, and I get some books that are tough to get through, but still, for $1, I'm entertained, and it's worth it. But I was really happy that I found Long Time No See. I'm not going to say I probably wouldn't have read it if I hadn't have. I think that if it would have came across on my recommended or something like that on Amazon or Goodreads, I probably would have picked it up, like I said, just based off of its cover. It's got a really beautiful cover, and I think that the story is interesting. I like Ireland. I think that it seems like an interesting place to be, so I probably would have gotten it, but to get it for $1, it was well worth the gamble that I got it for. So I was really happy when I read it, and I enjoyed it a lot. The thing that I really like the most about Long Time No See is that it's very character driven. I've never read Dermot Healy's works before, and so I didn't really know what to expect. But I really enjoyed it because of the characters. I really enjoy anything that's heavily character driven and has good dialogue. Obviously, I love a good narrative, but I love things that are character driven when characters are well developed and they're kind of the centerpiece of the story. Also, the setting was just very authentic feeling. I was able to place myself in Ireland, in that part of Ireland, pretty easy. And I really like that. You can get lost in these worlds, and I don't know about you all, or I don't know about you kids, but when I read a book and you've got good characters that you enjoy reading about and being around, and then you've got a good setting that feels real and authentic, there were times that I would be at work and I would be thinking, I'm ready to get home so I could travel back to Ireland, as nerdy as that sounds, and spend some more time with these people. But those were the reasons that I really enjoyed it. That's one of the main reasons that it's my number 5 book of the year. When I got finished reading it, I thought about reading it over again as soon as it was finished, which was kind of crazy because I've not reread a book just yet. I want to continue reading something that's next. I'm starting to get pangs to reread some books that I haven't read in a while, but for me to want to reread something as soon as it was over, because I missed the setting and I missed being in the world and being with these characters, I just thought that was pretty indicative of a good book. So that's why it landed at number 5 for me. The characters, it talked about Phillip Feeny, that JoeJoe calls Mr. Psyche. Phillip is, like it said, he's like 18 or 19 years old. He's kind of coming into the world. This is definitely a coming of age story, but Phillip has had a car accident in which his best friend has passed away from that car accident. And so he's dealing with the trauma of the accident, and he's trying to get over the grief, and he struggles also a lot with survivor's guilt. And so he's trying to get over all of these things. He's got a girlfriend that he seems to be in love with. Her name is Anna, and she is a very good girlfriend in the book. She's very patient and sensitive with him. And I think Phillip has this thought process of, I'm afraid I might ruin this relationship if I don't kind of snap out of it, but he just can't seem to snap out of it. But he's very close with his granduncle JoeJoe. And Phillip, by the way, lives at home still with his mother and father. And JoeJoe's house is just a short walk from their house. But Philip spends a lot of time with JoeJoe, his granduncle, and it kind of reminded me of the relationship that I had with my grandmother. Her house to me was like a safe haven. It was a place that I could go to just to get away from things. I knew that I wouldn't be judged when I showed up there. I knew that I could just be myself and I was accepted and I was loved for that. And I feel like that's kind of how Philip views going over to JoeJoe's house. He's very close with JoeJoe. He kind of confides into JoeJoe, and JoeJoe ends up confiding in him as well. And JoeJoe has a friend named the Blackbird, and because of the relationship between JoeJoe and the Blackbird, Philip's also become pretty close with the Blackbird as well. The Blackbird is a very, very eccentric character. I can't remember right off the top of my head why he was called the Blackbird, but I do know that he had the same last name. He had the last name of Feeny, and JoeJoe was adamant that they were not related because the Blackbird would say that they were cousins, and it was just one of those weird things that JoeJoe and the Blackbird would get in a fight about, and he would be adamant when he would leave that to Philip that he was not the Blackbird's cousin. They were not related, and he wished that he would stop saying that to people. A lot of times when the Blackbird would be walking up to JoeJoe's house, he would complain to Philip about him coming up, but then he would welcome him in as an old friend. And it just kind of reminded me or made me think of how friendships, someone you've been best friends with probably your entire life, and you're getting old and you're getting a little crotchety and you know each other so well. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's not my cousin. I wish you would stop doing that. I wish you would go away. But truthfully, you don't want that. I feel like that's just a typical old man relationship. But there's an accident that happens, as the synopsis was saying. There's a bullet hole that shows up in JoeJoe's window of his door to his house. And JoeJoe has a gun inside of his house, and they're trying to figure out what happened. And the dad thinks that JoeJoe shot it from inside the house, so he takes JoeJoe's gun from him, which causes a big scene. But JoeJoe swears that he didn't do it. He even pins it on the Blackbird at one point. But JoeJoe, when this happens, this is an event where you can see, I guess, kind of that loss of independence that the elderly go through. I know that, speaking of my grandmother, I know that was something that I watched. She seemed to me such an independent person when I was growing up, and she had a medical emergency, and then that independence, I should say, slowly started to disappear, and she became very dependent on others around her, and it was tough to see. But that's kind of what's going on with JoeJoe, and he's kind of starting to lose his dependence a little bit. They're starting to question, I guess, his mind and his thinking, just in the sense of, is he completely aware of what's going on around him? And JoeJoe's having a hard time with that, and so is Philip, because Philip is still in JoeJoe's corner, and the mother and the father, Philip's mother and father, are trying to get JoeJoe to move in with them, and JoeJoe just flat out refuses to. And so there's just this whole situation where Philip is overcoming this trauma, and he is trying to snap out of it a little bit, I guess. And he is now trying to go through this process with JoeJoe and be as sensitive with JoeJoe, because JoeJoe means so much to him. And then the Blackbird ends up being put in a nursing home, and that just kind of compounds on the situation, because again, Philip was close to both of them, and Philip is having to go through and see these two people that, again, were very independent people and very eccentric, and see them kind of go through that battle of old age. And also, Philip, like I talked about earlier, is trying to sort through this love life that he's got, because he has this girl, Anna, who's being extremely sensitive towards him, But one thing that kind of keeps coming up is Anna is wanting him to, I guess, act like a boyfriend, and she's trying to get him to go to the nightclub with her and her friends and do things with her, and he's just not quite ready to do those things. I think one of the reasons, if I can remember correctly, is because he and his friend enjoyed going to the nightclub together, and so he's still kind of having that trauma of going out, and he feels guilty because his friend can't go out as well, and he survived the accident and his friend didn't. So he's having to, work around that issue. And then while all that's going on, the Blackbird sadly passes away, and that kind of upends everyone just a little bit because Philip's family were close with the Blackbird. I think the Blackbird, we've probably all got one of those eccentric people in our lives that we are kind of annoyed to be around, but also if they're gone, we know that we would miss them. Our family has gotten very close with them, and when the Blackbird passes away, Philip's mom is a nurse at the nursing home. She took care of the Blackbird while he was there. They're very upset. They have a wake at JoeJoe's house, and at that wake, Philip's best friend's parents come in and see him and talk to him, and I think that it was the first time that they had talked to him since the funeral of their son. And it was just kind of a moment where they told him, everything's okay, we don't blame you, everything is okay, it's not your fault. JoeJoe ends up taking in the Blackbird's dog, and those are some of my favorite moments when the Blackbird would talk about his dog or have his dog with him. And I'm probably going to say this wrong because I know it's an Irish word, but it's spelled Gnoic. So the way that I would say it is Noic. But he would talk about the dog and how to get him to do as he asked. He would yell, Noic, Noic. And he will leave instructions when he was having them go take care of the dog while he was in the nursing home. And he was like, hey, if he's not going to listen to you, make sure that you yell Noic at him. And then JoeJoe takes him in. And then soon, unfortunately, after that, JoeJoe ends up passing away himself. And Philip ends up moving into his house. And I think that he talks about how it was difficult, how to be there, to live there, because he could smell JoeJoe. He could see the things that JoeJoe would use every day. JoeJoe had a blanket that he would use, and so it was a little reminiscent of, again, when I lost my grandmother. I just felt a lot of parallels to Philip and JoeJoe that I guess I felt with my grandmother, and that's probably one of the reasons that I enjoyed this book so much. It was a slow book to begin with. There were times that I felt like that it was not moving very quickly, and I wasn't really sure where it was going, and that to me, in the rating, I'll talk about that in a little bit, took away from it a little bit. However, I do think that it was really well done, because after you start to get more towards the Blackbird being put in the nursing home, and you get to JoeJoe going through that process, and Philip being there with him through that, you start to see that Dermot Healy had taken his time to build up these characters to make sure that they all felt connected and that you felt like you were a part of that community, that you were a part of that family. It was a small community in Ireland. It seemed like one of those places, kind of like where I'm from, where everyone knows everyone. And so I think that he built that up. He built that world. He took his time. He wasn't in a rush, because the payoff he knew would be there, and it was there. And I really just enjoyed, again, being in that community, being around those people, being in that world. It felt so real. And honestly, when I ended the book, I was sad. I think I grieved a little, because I enjoyed being with them so much, and that's why I had thought about rereading it as soon as I finished reading it, because I wanted to stay with them, and I wanted to see how Philip's relationship with Anna ended up, and I wanted to see how he adjusted to JoeJoe not being there and the Blackbird not being there. So it was just a really cool book. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, for me, it was well worth the money. $1 for a hardback version of this, and it was in perfect condition. It was well worth it. I hope the person that I bought it, I guess, from, whoever brought it to McKay's to sell, I hope that they enjoyed it as much as I did. I really did enjoy it. It was just really heartwarming story. It was really good to be there in that community, in that world, and just sitting here talking about it now, it makes me want to go back and reread it and relive that. I think that for me, the message, I guess we have to get into that, a message that I thought was there, that I took from that, was that, things are always going to change, and things are not always going to change pleasantly, but the best that we can do is just embrace it and try to handle it in our own way, but always put our best foot forward. It worked out for him, and you feel happy for Phillip, even though that he's had to grieve and go through these deaths and this process and this trauma. You feel happy for Phillip because it seems like at the end of the book, he's definitely on his way up. And I think that goes to the author for creating good characters, for creating a realistic, authentic setting. I think it goes to him for taking his time and being willing to take his time and not rush it and build these characters up. And again, the payoff was there when we got to the end of the book. One thing about this book, though, is it's very dialogue heavy, and I feel like sometimes, every now and then, you can have a book that's dialogue heavy and it doesn't feel as literary. I don't know if anyone out there agrees with me on that, but there just doesn't seem to be as much narrative in there, and I think that a lot of times we're looking for that narrative to give us the literary merit that we need in these books, or desire, or we're seeking for. However, we do have books like this one that are very dialogue heavy, and they have that literary merit, and I think that this absolutely has that. One thing that I did read about Long Time No See, because like I said, I haven't read any other Dermot Healy books, and I'm looking forward to picking up a few more. From what I read, this is the most dialogue that Dermot Healy has ever put into one of his books. And so I thought that was interesting. My first introduction to the author was in a style that he really typically doesn't write in, but I enjoyed it nonetheless, and I highly recommend it to you guys. If you're not one of my children and you haven't read this yet, I really recommend it. I think it's a good read. It started off, I don't know if you all get in those little book themes, but there tends to be, I get into these weird rhythms when I'm reading that are, I don't know if something's at work or what, but one time we were reading books and Native Americans kept popping up, Native American history and culture, and this started one of those swings for me with Ireland. The next book I read was based in Ireland. It's actually my number 4 book in my top 5 of 2024. And then the book after that, that's in our top 3, I read that very shortly after I read these 2 books, and the protagonist in it happened to be from Ireland, even though the book was set in Appalachia. So just one of those weird things where everything I was reading at the time was set in Ireland. So I really felt like I was in that community to an extent, in that world to an extent, because of that weird little swing. I don't know what you would call it, a swing of Ireland, or that little window that just kept like popping up. I don't know how to describe it. I'm probably the only person who goes through that. I don't know if you all do as well, but anyways, it was fun to read it, and I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it. It was pretty quick to read. I think I read it in 4 or 5 days. It's, like I said, it's dialogue heavy, so you're not necessarily having to sit there and go through a ton of words, so you should read it pretty quickly. And if you're not a big reader and you're looking to get into reading, I think that this would be a really good book to pick up, because it's pretty quick. I think it's like 380 something pages long. It's just really fun to read. I think we all like dialogue. It was good. So to kind of wrap things up, I will give you my ratings. I use 2 ratings because I'm strange. Also, though, because I don't like decimal points. And so I notice sometimes people will be like on Goodreads 3.5. I don't know why that bothers me. It's a me thing. If you do that, I'm not judging you. This is a problem that I have to sort through. But I guess I just like things nice and neat. And so I gave Long Time No See 4 stars. So that's the Goodreads scale, 1 to 5. And then my own, which is probably way too complicated, is 1 through 20. So what I did is if it was 1 through 4, then it's a 1 star. If I rated it 5 through 8 or 9, then it would be a 2 star. And then 10 through 14 is a 3 star. 14 through 18 or 14 through 17 is a 4. And then you have your remaining, which would be a 5 star. I know that that's weird, but it's just what I do to help my brain not get hung up on things. So I gave it, again, 4 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it a 16 on my custom scale, just because, like I said, it is slow to begin with, and I'm thankful that it is slow, but I could see people trying to skip through it a little bit. If you're one of those people, I know people who do that. They feel like they've got the gist of it. We're going to skip a few places because it's not really moving, or maybe it's not moving fast enough for me. I'm going to set it down for a little while and go read something else. I could see someone doing that with this book, so that's why I didn't really give it the 5-star treatment. But I do think that it's worth hanging in there for. I do think that it's worth continuing to read, and I highly recommend it. So if you haven't read it, if you haven't read any of Dermot Healy's, I don't really know if this is the one to start with. It's just the one that I picked up first because, like I said, it was one of my McKay's gambles, and it turned into one of my McKay's treasures. If you've read a Dermot Healy book, maybe you can tell us somehow that this is one of his better ones, or there are better ones out there. I think that there are more acclaimed ones that he's written that I've planned on picking up, but I enjoyed it, and like I said, I enjoyed it so much that I want to read more of his works. So maybe if you've read some of Dermot Healy's and you've read this one as well, maybe you can let us know if it's one of the better ones, or if there are better ones out there. So thanks for listening. If you've popped in, if you're not one of my kids, thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it, and listening to me ramble here about books. But kids, I hope that you enjoyed this book as much as I do. And we'll talk to you guys the next time when we talk about our number 4 book of 2024, Say Nothing.